I'm quite pleased that Barbarossa made this video, which I'm making a video response to. I'm going to post a link to his video in the box for a number of reasons. One, it's become glaringly apparent to me as well that a vast, well, seemingly vast number of MRAs and men, but also women who purport to be for men's rights, really can only look at the issue of men's rights from the viewpoint of the so-called relationship. And to be fair, the male-female dynamic or the male-female relationship is a fair starting point to understanding for understanding all of these issues. However, at some point in time, once we've understood that dynamic and uh, grasped the dynamic properly, we need to move past that. Um, there, as Barbaros has stated, there does indeed seem to be a great deal of commentary on the idea of men's rights within the sphere of the so-called relationship. That men's rights is exclusively about fatherhood, or men's rights is exclusively about the family. Um, and what we see missing here is the distinct mention of men themselves. This is a problem, at least a problem I see. We cannot understand men's rights exclusively within the context of the female-male relationship. It is a starting point. It is perhaps the starting point, because much of male identity is constructed around that dynamic. But it's very important that we move past that with time. Now, a while back, Barbaros made a fantastic video. It was one of the videos that really set me off to make my own. Um, and wherein he talks about the concept of male weakness as being independent of the female. Whereas most people, for reasons of evolution, social development, regard weakness in itself as a female trait. Um, so we have an entire set of behavioral patterns and expressions of behavior that are really limited to one sphere of humanity and not the other. And once again, we see how interconnected and interlinked male behavior, male expectations are um, to the relationship with the female. Let me state for myself that men's rights should ultimately be about male individuality, men asserting their rights to be themselves, with no such expectations put on them along the lines of uh, family, procreation, any of these things. All the risks of procreating, marrying, and having a relationship slash marriage notwithstanding, that's a somewhat separate issue. But to look at men's rights and individual male sovereignty solely within the sphere of the female-male dynamic of the so-called relationship is quite counterproductive. But there does seem to be a vocal chunk of men within the MRM whose primary interest is that. I think Barbarossa put it, I'm paraphrasing, that a lot of men are a slow job away from jumping ship in the MRM and going back to the so-called good old days. But the point I want to just highlight here is that it really is very revealing that even now, even though so many of us have explained and laid out and just really extrapolated on and expanded on the dynamic of the relationship and male nature and human nature and female nature, that we still have men who persistently and doggedly adhere uh, to male identity solely within the context of the relationship procreation, i.e., the provider workhorse. It's pretty disappointing, to be perfectly honest. The primary concern, in my opinion, of men's rights should be about men themselves and men as individuals. If we don't, if men are never capable, I don't want to, I apologize, that's not the term I want to use. If men at this current age and current state of affairs are not in a position to rethink themselves and rethink their identities beyond provider, workhorse, I'm in a relationship with a female. If male identity can't exist without that, as it stands now, we're in some serious trouble. There have been some bones tossed our way in the sense that MGTOW, men going their own way, for example, it's seen as sort of a uh, last ditch yet pseudo necessary alternative to a so-called a culture where relationships are just not a possibility, which really begs the question: were they ever a possibility? Yes, within a very, very limited context of provider workhorse, worker drone. So many of us just don't want to fit into that role anymore. So many of us don't want that anymore. I certainly don't. I value my freedom, my personal freedom, and all the shaming language in the world won't change my opinion about that. But to only look at men within the sphere of the so-called relationship, it's quite dangerous. And one other thing amongst these bones tossed at us, well, I'll get to the accusations in a second. I think Barbarossa came up with the appropriate acronym, same as the feminists, SATIF, or however you want to pronounce it. But let me just say off the bat right here that one criticism of MGTOW is very interesting is that it's not a plan for the human race. It's not a plan for well, essentially procreation. I think I don't want to speak for Barbarossa, but I know for myself, and I'm inclined to think you'd agree that a lot of the stuff we talk about is futuristic in nature. That it's simply they're simply interesting predictions that likely can be mapped onto to certain events at the current moment in time. However, ultimately, MGTOW is about the now. It's about right now. It's about the present. We're not concerned. A, we're not responsible for making babies and running families, but moreover, we're not concerned with the future of the human race. In fact, I think the future of the human race, at least barring an asteroid colliding with Earth or some atomic explosion. I mean, we have enough people. So this and the number of men going their own way is so infinitesimally small that to voice that as an actual concern or criticism of MGTOW is ludicrous. It's preposterous. MGTOW is preventing procreation and the continuation of the human race. But let's talk about this same as the feminists. It is a form of deflection. We hear it from both men and women that we're being the same as the feminists because we express concern because we reject the workhorse role, the worker drone role, and because we don't kowtow to female needs. As we said, I think we've both stated that ultimately we want women to develop themselves and to improve themselves intellectually and otherwise. Um, and I have no interest in keeping women on a leash and telling them what to do. But what I do have an interest in is creating an environment one day, and It's going to be a long way off, and I'll be dust and bones before that. When women will be forced to develop themselves, we all have situations in life where we've deemed it impossible to further ourselves as individuals or to improve our skills. I mean, this is anecdotal and it sounds a bit silly, but when I was studying translation technology, I had to work a lot with web design stuff and all of this stuff I wasn't familiar with, and it was really overwhelming because we had shit teachers. I basically had to teach most of the stuff to myself. But learning by doing, and eventually I got the hang of it. Although these days I forgot most of it. But the point is that when faced with a difficult situation, no matter how small or great it might be, people have the capacity to learn, to overcome, and to improve themselves. You just have to want it, or alternatively, be forced into it. By letting women have true independence, we can create an environment where they will be forced into it. All arguments about human nature or female nature notwithstanding, to the contrary notwithstanding, this idea that women simply cannot, I don't believe that. In the current climate we have, and as a consequence of millennia of development and evolution, yeah, at the moment, women probably cannot. Some will, some can, but we need to create a different environment, a one that forces and brings about that need to develop and to push past that for women. We all enjoy being in our comfort zone. It's easier. It's just more pleasant. It's more comfortable. But we really need to push past that. Instead of being trapped in old-fashioned paradigms that neither side wants. Women don't want to play house anymore, and many men don't want that either. We don't want to be kin, and we don't want to be worker drones anymore. So, back to the original point. If men want to have families, that's fine. As I said, all those risks are there. But to make men's rights solely about the issue of fatherhood, to the exclusion of everything else, which really seems to be the practice as it stands now in many MRM videos, blogs, and comments. I think that's the wrong move. I don't think it's addressing key issues such as male individuality, male identity. What does it mean to be male? It is true. Up until now, all we've had is the dominance hierarchy competition model, the provider workhorse model. That's all we've had. That doesn't mean we can't move past that, and it also doesn't mean that we shouldn't. We most certainly should, we can, and many of us already are doing so. Thanks for watching.